Hi, welcome to the OnShape series. I'm Mr. Redmond. Today we're going to start our first project, our first component in OnShape. The way you start this, once you log in to OnShape, what I would suggest doing is creating a project. It's really just a folder. They call it a project, and you keep all the parts inside that project for one set of lessons or one type of thing you're creating. It doesn't really matter how you organize it, but making each of your files inside of one project, it helps you organize them and keep on top of things. You would do that here by starting a project, which is this icon right here, and it just asks for a name and a description, and then you enter it. I'm in my first project here. It is called OnShape Tutorial Parts. This is where I'm going to make all the parts that I will be teaching you about OnShape with. So we're going to create our first one here. You click on the blue Create button and then on Document. All of the parts in OnShape are referred to as documents, and they are called that because they're kind of multi-layered. There's a lot of things you can do in a document. I'm going to create my first document. Today I'm going to call this widget 1. Widgets are really just nonsense parts that engineers have been using for decades to create in drafting school and things of that nature. We're going to create this one over here today. We're going to call it widget 1. And so it enters us into the part studio here. You see that we have 3 axes in the main field here that we can use to create our part. So our part right here, as you see, the overall shape is a rectangle. This rectangle here, that rectangle is 60 millimeters by 40 millimeters tall. I see that by this dimension on this side here. So we're going to replicate this overall shape right now. This rectangle. And it is pretty easy. So in 3D modeling, what you need to do is you create a sketch, you create a 2D picture, and then you make it 3 dimensions with a tool, either extrusions or revolving, or what is called sweep or loft, which are just fancy versions of these other 2. And there's a few other tools as well to modify those parts after the fact. But they all start with a sketch. So we're going to click on this button here to start our first sketch. And in order to make a sketch, we have to choose a plane to sketch on. Because of the orientation and how I'm going to start this widget here, I'm going to choose the front plane right here. So I'm going to click on the front plane, and this other bigger rectangle kind of shows up here. It shows that I'm going to be working on that front plane. But from this view, the way we're looking at it, we want to, it's going to be hard to draw. And so what we want to do is we want to look dead on to this plane, and you can do that by clicking on the various faces of the view cube up here in the top right. So I'm going to click on the front. Since we want to look at the front, we are now in the front plane. And now we need to draw a rectangle. This will be pretty simple. Just a simple rectangle. We're going to draw. We're going to ignore this notch taken out right here. We're going to ignore this hole in the front at this moment. We're just going to make a 60 by 40 rectangle here on the front plane. And click on the corner rectangle tool up here in the top left, and I click down on the field, and then I move my mouse across the field here and then I click down one more time. Don't click anymore. I am still in the rectangle tool. You'll see the crosshair on my cursor that's saying that I'm still in the rectangle tool. What I want to do now, without touching anything, without moving my mouse around too much, is I want to manually enter the value for this dimension. Don't click on it. You're going to want to click on it. It's intuitive to click on it, but don't yet. So it is currently at 86.5, etc. I want to make this 60, and so I just type in 60 on my keyboard and hit enter, and it changes the size of my rectangle. Then it moves it to the other dimension automatically. You see the box is now around the other dimension, the height of this box. We want to make it 40, so I just type in 40 on my keyboard and hit enter. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, that I should have mentioned earlier, is I am in millimeters right now on my document. Look at the intro video, the previous video, and it will show you how to change your dimensions on the document to inches or millimeters or other dimensions. So I'm in millimeters at the moment, which is why my rectangle right now is this size and not much larger. So here we are. Now I have my 40 by 60 rectangle, and that's all I want to do at the moment. So I'm going to hit the escape key so that my tool is turned off, so now I'm back to a regular cursor. Now, if you boogered this up and you didn't get to enter in these values manually, and you have a different, much longer number right there, you can edit these dimensions. You double click right here. You see where it goes to the, looks like you can drag these dimensions around a little bit. You can double click here and you can then edit the dimensions. You can make them bigger or smaller depending on what you need. I'm not going to do that now. If you don't have numbers at all, you can force dimensions a different way, and that's using this dimension tool up here. So if I make this one go away, which I'll do right now just to show you, I can come up here, click on the dimension tool, and then click on this line. See, it turns gold when I do that. Drag it up, and then manually enter in 60 as my dimension. That's how you would force it or manually enter in the dimensions if you didn't do it when you made the rectangle to begin with. Now at this point, the sketch is complete. All I wanted to do was make this first rectangle here. So I'm going to click on this green check at the sketch one right there, and it turns pale gray, and we're still looking at the front. And that's not exactly a convenient view. So I'm going to click on the corner up here on the view cube, and it will put us back in the isometric view, looking at it from an angle like this. See, now we have our beautiful rectangle right there sitting in one plane at this moment. We want to make this now a three-dimensional prism. We're going to use the extrude tool up here next to the sketch button to make it into something three-dimensional. When you click on extrude, it's going to ask you to click on a face or a region to extrude. This time, the face we want to extrude is the rectangle we just created. So I'm going to click on it, and it turns into some three-dimensional block. In OnShape, the default is about an inch. This is 25 millimeters, which is just about an inch. And we're going to change this because we don't want it to be 25 millimeters deep. We want it to be 30 millimeters deep, according to our sketch on the left there. It's 30, you see right here. So now we have a block. We can now finish our extrusion and click on the green check there. So now we have our block. So at this stage, if you made an error in and the size, you can always double click on either the sketch or the feature we have made, the extrusion, and change it. You can double click here, this pops back up, and if you didn't want it to be 30, you wanted it to be 60, you type that in, and you can change it. You can change it as many times as you need, just make it correct, and you'll be good to go. You can even change the sketch if you wanted to by double clicking on the sketch and changing the dimensions again, and it will automatically update. It will move those changes forward as far as it can. It doesn't always work. If you get parts that are very, very complicated, sometimes it changes it too much, and you'll have to start removing features slowly. But at this point, we are good to go. So the next feature to add to our block here is this notch that has been taken out. It is another rectangle, so that's simple. We know how to use the rectangle tool. It is 15 tall. It is, we don't know how long it is. We need to do some math here. We see that this is 60 here, and this is 10 here, and 25 here. So 60 minus 25 minus 10 leaves us with 25 left. And so we now know that this is a 15 millimeter tall rectangle and a 25 millimeter long rectangle. So we need to make that rectangle on the face of the cube we have already made. We're going to click on sketch one more time. We are going to click on now the face of our block. And we now have a new plane that is absolutely parallel with the front of our block. We're going to change our view back to front so that we're looking dead on again, because that's more convenient. And now we need to make another rectangle. We're going to make it right on top of this face. For convenience, in this case, we want to start the rectangle on this top line. We want the top line to be locked in place along the top so that we don't have to worry about some of the dimensions. So I'm going to click there, drag, or not drag, but just move my mouse along the field, and then click down. And so now I can enter in our values manually one more time. It is 25 millimeters wide, so I'm going to type in 25 for the top value, hit enter, and it is 15 tall, so I'm going to type in 15 for the side value, and click enter. And that gives us our rectangle. Again, if you miss those dimensions, you can manually enter them using the dimension tool if you need to. We need to use the dimension tool here because at this moment, we don't know if it is exactly 10 millimeters away from the left edge of our block. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to come up here to the dimension tool, click on it, and now I can manually enter in the dimension between these two. I'm going to click on the left side of the edge there, and then I'm going to click on this part of our rectangle there. You'll see that it's close to 10, but not quite. So here is this dimension. It's floating around in space and time. I can click down and place it there and manually enter in 10 and hit enter, and it's just going to scooch it over just a wee bit. Now, this is a fully dimensioned part of our sketch. We have our rectangle there. It is exactly 10 millimeters apart. It's exactly 15 millimeters tall and 25 long. This sketch is done. So I'm going to click on the green check, and it is finished. You see that it turns pale once again. I'm going to click on the view cube up here on that corner again so that I can get a better vantage point of our part. Now we need this to be extruded as well. So this is our new notch, but right now it's just a sketch. We need to extrude it. So we'll come up here to the top left, click on the extrude, tool, and then we're going to click on our new sketch, and you'll see that it comes out forward. This is not what we want. This here does not look like this over here. So instead of adding new stuff, that's what this tab means right here. It's add material. We can create new material or add material. We can also remove material. So we're going to go over here and click on the remove tab, and it's going to change the direction of our extrusion. And you'll see that it's, of course, because it's going to a certain depth, and it defaults to 1 inch or 25 millimeters, just going back 25 millimeters. But our box is actually 30 millimeters deep, so we can change that to 30 if we want. However, there is a better way. So that does that. It's fine. That works. There's a better way, because in the event that you had a wrong extrusion here and you need to be deeper than 30 millimeters, this will always stay 30 millimeters. And so if this was 40 and you needed to change it, this would stay 40, and you'd have to change this feature as well. But what we can change is the drop-down menu right here. We can change it from blind extrusion to through all. Through all. You click on that, you'll see that it all goes all the way through our piece, all the way from one end to the next, all the way through. And we have completed our notch. We're going to click on the green check right there, and look how good this is. If you are using a mouse to create an OnShape, you can orbit your part by holding down the right mouse clicker, and you can move that around like this, which is pretty fun. And if you get a little confused and get all off topic, if you will, you can always click on one of these corners and go back to an isometric view. But even if you get a little bit further than that, you can drop down this cube here and click on isometric. It'll go back to your home view. Here we are in the home view. We have one more feature to add, and that is this square hole through this side. So we need to add one more feature, and we're going to put it on this face here. So I'm going to click on sketch, because every sketch is how we start every single feature. We're going to click on this front portion right here, not the front, the right side rather. So here we go. Sketch 3 plane is parallel to this side right here. I'm going to click on the right part of our view cube, so I'm looking dead on. And I need to make one more rectangle on this, this face. I'm going to click on the rectangle. And what I want to do here is I want this rectangle to be away from everything. So if I were to start the rectangle here, you see where this dashed line appears, it's going to lock it in place on this axis. The same is true for each of the sides of our rectangle. We do not want our rectangle locked in to any of these sides. We want it to be free in space over here. We want it away from the sides. So I'm going to put it, I'm going to just start it over here. Why not? I'm going to make it kind of small just to show you this. So I click down once and I move my mouse around, and then I click down one more time, and I'm ready to add in my dimensions. We see that it is 15 wide. So I'm going to type in 15 right here, hit enter, and it makes it a little bit wider. And now it needs to be 10 tall, as we see right here. This is 10. So I can type in 10 and hit enter. And now we have this appropriately sized rectangle sitting on the right side of our part. We are not yet done. I'm going to hit the escape key so that I'm no longer in that tool. I need to now dimension this appropriately, because right here, this is not the correct location for my box, right? That seems it's too high up and it's too close over to the left side. So I need to move this, and I'm going to do it just like we did with the notch. We need to add a dimension. I click on my dimension tool here, And now I'm going to click on these two lines. Click on the far left, and then this side of our new box, and I'm going to move the dimension up here just so I can see it, and it needs to be 3 millimeters away from the left side there. And we're going to do this one more time with the bottom. This one's a little bit harder to see because of the way this has been dimensioned, but this is 5 millimeters here. So this is 5 millimeters from this side here. Click down, and to the bottom there, click down there. I'm going to change that from 15.5 to 5, and should scoot this down all the way there. Beautiful. So now we have a perfectly dimensioned rectangle in our right side face of our part. I'm going to click on the green check to finish this sketch up and go back to our ISO view like this. Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see better. Now, the very last part of our widget is to extrude this. Now, it does not tell you that it goes all the way through, but I'm telling you now that this hole goes all the way through to the other side. So we're going to click on the extrude one more time, and I'm going to click on this sketch here, this feature. You want to make sure that this one here is highlighted and not this one, because this is what happens. If you click on this, it's going to extrude all of it. You don't want to do that. So that's a no-no. Make that go away. How do I make that go away? Click it one more time and it goes away. So if we click on just the inner rectangle right here, it sticks out just like it did before. We don't want it to stick out. We want to remove material instead of adding material. We'll click on the Remove tab there, and then again drop down the menu for its depth from blind all the way down to through all. Click the green check, and we are done. Look at this. And you see, it goes all the way through. It's very cool. And over here on the browser, you can see all of our features here. The sketch there, and then an extrusion, sketch and an extrusion, a sketch and an extrusion. And that's essentially how all of your parts should look at the end. You can highlight each of those features and sketches individually, which is pretty fun. All right, that's our first part. I hope you enjoyed this, and next video we'll make a more complicated part with some angles in it.